This one works.
Yeah, it's all good.
Should I just play the sound for a second so I can just...
Yep, travelers play.
Do you need any more help?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
We didn't know how to connect the laptop to the sound system, but I think we should pick it up. It should be fine.
I'm just concerned like it might not pick up the spoken audio.
If you play a snippet for a second.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is a pretty strong mic, so my guess is that if your sound is up all the way, it'll pick up.
Okay. Wait, there it is. This one.
Everything's fine. You're fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm going to give you this one.
Okay. I'll connect that. 1 second. View. Slideshow. Play from start.
I'm just going to get you...
It's a US, it's just a regular USB.
Doug is here. Yeah. You can ask him if we have a cord, but
Yeah, so that's the splitter.
that's what I was wondering if it
Here,
was.
just hold that and just pull it on the cord for something.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, that's the one.
So did that.
Well, he's just checking. He's following it back.
Michelle. I just don't know even like how that works. Like,
So-
do you need a two-way?
Yeah, it has to be USB to USB.
Yeah. So that's the question.
Or
We
USB to
have- we
HDMI
have
or
that.
USB to something.
We're working on getting a hookup.
Oh, amazing.
Or won't read. Okay.
Reached all the way?
It might.
But where are you plugging that into?
What do you mean?
So that wasn't attached to anything.
But this goes normally to the laptop, and then that's plugging to something.
So we can just plug it in.
Do you have another?
I have an adapter.
Where's the speaker? That goes to the laptop that brings the sound?
Yeah, if this can go right into the laptop, that's the laptop.
But it's not.
No, because that's the other end of it.
That's the other end of it. I just want to. You're trying to get the sounds of there.
To the sound system.
The
Is the
sound.
only
If it's
connection?
possible.
Is the only connection you have a USB connection?
Right now, yes. I'm trying to figure out that. Is that our projector or is that yours?
That's your projector.
Yeah.
I have an adapter right now for my clicker, but it only has one USB port.
How do we connect to the laptop?
Maybe I have another USB.
Otherwise, like right now, we've got the
microphone.
on it, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I have like,
We need to get sound from there over there. It's not USB. That's the problem. It's audio.
oh, there's an audio, the red and white. Oh, so that's AV, audio video.
We need to get from there to there. That's
Right,
the problem.
yeah. Okay. Huh? Oh, yeah, we'll troubleshoot. I just didn't know it was something that, like nobody mentioned before.
but I'm not.
My middle name is Karen.
Oh, really?
I didn't want to, and I also a young man spoke. My
Was it my friend Eddie?
This is Marla Beck. Have you been here before?
No, just at the entrance. Not inside of the theater.
Good, well,
So did you, were you born here? No, but born and buried?
No, they said it's built in, but I don't think it is.
Or are you gonna tell?
Yeah, I don't think it is though. Or maybe it has Bluetooth in, but I have to double check. Jody sent me the instructions. I gotta read them. That's Wi-Fi.
Oh.
So it has Wi-Fi built in. I don't know if I can connect to that to connect to the laptop, and then we can stream from the laptop. But for now, we'll do like this. 'Cause normally there's a dongle.
Because there's a, but that's a video.
Yeah, that's video. No, but the Wi-Fi. She gave me the user manual. I've just been reading it, so I gotta do that for the holidays. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody mentioned that it came from well, no, it's Wi-Fi built in there, but no, again, it's something. Yeah.
How do I put this on?
Do you just put it on your ear?
Like this?
Should just hold here.
I should just
Yeah,
talk.
just do like a test.
Test.
Can everyone hear?
Test.
Yeah, great.
Cool. I feel like it's gonna go in my mouth.
Yeah, I know. You get used to it. Okay, great. I got this.
Never. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to speak loud because Shai has the mic, but hopefully you can all hear me. So first of all, thank you so much for being here with us tonight for our Stay Put program. I'm going to waste no time in introducing you to Shai Kine, who's a Canadian-born, Toronto-raised photographer who had spontaneously made Aliyah to Israel just months before October 7th, before the October 7th Supernova Music Festival. As the attack unfolded, he continued documenting what unfolded through his camera and captured one of the most harrowing moments in modern Jewish history from an unprecedented first-person perspective. Nearly 2 years later, he shares that perspective through powerful imagery and storytelling, providing context, clarity, and humanity to a story that's too often misunderstood. Through his photography, advocacy work, and speaking engagements across over 200 cities in North America, Shai amplifies survivor voices and challenges and confronts rising anti-Semitism with honesty and empathy. His work helps communities understand the lived realities of survivors today and challenges audiences to engage, reflect, and further their understanding. And for us, having Shai here is especially personal because he grew up in Barrie. When he was young, he briefly attended our heritage school at Shalom, so he's truly one of our own. And we're so glad that he's here and able to share his story. So please come on in and over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shai.
Hello, everybody. Can I push this behind me? Just forwards? 1 minute. Tripping hazard. It's okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Shai Weinstein. I have 2 last names because my parents couldn't decide. And I was born and raised in Toronto. And shortly after being born in Toronto, my family moved up north here to the Bay Area, just to Innisfil, that way. And that's where I lived ever since, until 2023, when I got my tax return back. And I thought, this is too much money for me to be responsible with. And I wasn't. I decided to purchase a ticket to Israel, not knowing what would happen. I didn't know that after I got to Israel, I would cancel my ticket home and just stay and make Aliyah. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't a thought. I just decided Canada's not going anywhere. I lived in Canada my whole life, 26 years at the time. Why not experience something different? And so April 27, 2023, I arrived in Israel, and then I think by the first week of May, I was already with an ID card and a bank account and had made Aliyah. And so my family on my mom's side are all Israeli. They're all from Israel, my grandparents, my cousins, everyone. And my cousin, who was raised in the north of Israel, lives in Tel Aviv now, hosted me for the 4 months and much longer after the fact when I arrived. And one of his neighbors, who lived 1 floor above him at the time, is a producer. He produces raves and parties, something I'm not really a fan of back in Canada. Only after moving into Israel did I sort of get exposure to this culture. And he comes down to my cousin's one day in September, and he tells myself and he tells my cousin, we're hosting a party. We're hosting a music festival. It'll be somewhere in Israel. We're not telling you where for security reasons, but it's going to be amazing. We want you guys to come, bring your friends. We'll give you all discounts. And it's called Supernova. It's happening on Sukkot. There's going to be thousands of people. It's happening with a really famous Brazilian production team who's known internationally for their huge 30, 40, 80,000 person parties that happen outdoors in the jungles of Brazil. And so me and my cousin, we're going, no question about it. We'll see you there. And so from that point on in September, we got together a group chat of around 50 or so people, and we really wanted to go with this huge, massive group. We planned to go on a bus together and everything. But life comes in the way, and less people are able to go. People cancel, people flake, people make new plans, people lose interest. And so out of 50 people who we wanted to come, we were a group of 8. Myself, my cousin Mordecai, his girlfriend at the time, and several friends. And if you've been to Israel at all, and if you've been to the Nova site, you know what it looks like, and you know the drive there. And so October 6th, we're at a friend's apartment. It's her birthday. Her birthday is October 7th, and we're celebrating overnight for her. We stay until midnight. We tell our friends goodbye, enjoy your birthday, have a good night. Hope you get some sleep, because we don't plan to. And then myself and my cousin were a group of 6 people at the time. 2 of our friends, Almog and Barak, were already at the festival since midnight, picked out a camp spot for us, and they were waiting for us there. So we all headed down after the fact. We headed down in 3 cars, me and my friend Doraz in his truck, my cousin Mordecai in his car, and our 2 friends already there. And on the drive down, it only took about 50 minutes to drive there from Tel Aviv to the Nova site in the south of Israel. Now, when we were driving down, it's the middle of the night, it's 2 in the morning, and we're seeing cars, not traffic, but we're seeing other cars traveling along the road with us. And we stop at the gas station in Kfar Aza, and we see these people all in the gas station as well, dressed like they're going to a party. And it was pretty evident that everybody was going to the same place. We get to the Nova site, and we make our way up this dirt path, up the main road, 232. We drive up this dirt road, and we go to the parking lot, which was just in the back here. This is the main festival ground, and this is what it looked like. So we enter the festival area, we get to the parking lot, we park our car. It's just a patch of dirt at this time because we're in the desert. It's the Negev. And we get out of the car, and you can see there is thousands of people. There's so many people. It's like if you go to see a concert at Massey Hall, it's insane. There was 4,000 people there, which is not the most I've ever seen at an event, but it was really something, because I've never been at this sort of thing before, an overnight festival with thousands and thousands of people. And people came from all over Israel, all over the world, specifically for this event, because the other production team is, like I said, super well known. People came from Brazil, from Germany, from Italy, from Turkey, from France, from Canada, from the US. There was so many different people there who were not just Jews from Israel. And so we go in this little area right here. This is where the ticket booth was. We get our tickets, and then all this forest here, not the whole forest, but just this section along the perimeter of the festival ground is where all the campground was. So you walk through these woods, these eucalyptus trees, and everybody has their camps and their yoga mats and their hammocks and their tents, and it's really an amazing environment because the festival producers lit up the woods with these yellow string lights all throughout the trees. And you could see everyone smiling and laughing and dancing and hugging and kissing, and you could really see that just everybody was welcoming one another into their little circles and their groups to enjoy the festival. And we get in, we see our friends, they're way in the back corner towards the end of the camp area. We get settled in, we say our hellos, we're ready to go. We make our way to the main festival ground, which is right here. This is the main festival ground, which is where these 2 photos are from. These are not my 2 photos. And you can see here on the right, this is the smaller stage, called the mushroom stage. And then here on the left, it's not there anymore because at the time of this image, they removed it. But this is where the main stage was. And then in the middle, you had a market, a shuk, a bar here, an arts tent. This is the security area where the security parked, and the VIP parking area, so all the producers and the festival staff had their area over here. So this over here is facing the main road, 232, and over here towards the sun is Gaza. That's where Gaza is. And we get in, we make our way to the main stage, and this is what it was like. This is from the main stage at around maybe 2:30, 3 a.m. And it was probably some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. But because I wasn't born and raised in Israel, I haven't been raving since high school like all of my friends. This is not something I'm built for. I need to take a break. I need water. I need a snack. I need to rest. And so I told my friends, well, you guys are enjoying yourselves and you're having such a good time. I'm going to go. I'm going to bring us some water, get us some snacks, and I'm going to walk around and take some photos because for the last 12 years, I've been a photographer. That's all I know. And so to document my first music festival, I brought my camera with me because why not? And so all throughout the night, I'm meeting people, learning who they are, where they're from, and asking permission to take their photos. So I meet here Dor and another Dor, two different Dors. One, this guy over here, this is my good friend now, Dor, and he is working. He was attending the festival as staff. You know, he was working a massage booth, something you could really use after 6 hours of dancing as a shiatsu. I can attest to this. And this is what he does for his life. This is his career. He's a massage therapist. So I ask if I can take his photo because I really liked his wolf coat. And then I tell him, you know, I'll see you around. Give me your WhatsApp so I can send you this photo in the next week. I'll catch you in the sunrise. Enjoy your night. And then I made my way just directly across from where I spoke to him. I see this booth where they're selling clothes and bags and jewelry and accessories from Southeast Asia, India, Thailand, etc. And Dor Avitan and his friend Dor Malka were working at this booth together, you know, just making some extra cash. And I asked his permission to take his photo. I learned he's from the city of Eilat. He came specifically to help his friend work his booth at this festival. And like everybody during the night, I make sure to get their contact info so I can reach them out to them in the next few days and give them these photos and share with them this, you know, amazing time and hopefully, you know, make a new friend. And as I'm walking around, I meet Itamar and Jesse and Jessica, all in the arts tent. They're all artists. Itamar and Jesse, they work for the Nova. Itamar is a graffiti artist and graphic designer, and he works with the Nova with their art activities and helping with programming for Nova survivors after the fact now. Jessie, she was responsible for doing the art direction of the festival, all the shapes, all the colors, all the designs, all that stuff. That was, you know, her and her team. And Jessica is a tattoo artist from a city in the center of Israel called Petah Tikva. And I saw her painting these shirts. You know, people would bring them their clothes, their shirts, their bags, their hats, their purses, and she would do cool graphics on them for them all throughout the night. As the night goes on, I'm doing this mostly. I'm not really spending too much time dancing. I'm just sort of socializing and schmoozing and just trying to make some new friends who are Israeli, who don't know my cousin, who don't know my family. And so around 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, I meet Itamar. I really like his crazy hippie mandala sweater, and I ask if I can take a photo of him. And then I get a text from my friend Ellie, and she says to me, "Shai, I'm at the main stage. Everybody else, they went back to our camp to take a little bit of a rest before the headline DJ comes on. Let's head back together. I'm here waiting for you." And so I head back to the main stage, and I'm looking for my friend Ellie, and neither she nor I are 6-foot-tall basketball players, so it's hard to find one person in a crowd of 1,000 people. And so I'm looking for my friend, and I can't find her, and so I do this thing I'm sure most people have done. I take out my phone, and I go on a video call, and I'm showing her, "Where are you? I'm by this. Where are you? I'm by this." The first video I showed you guys of the party itself, you know, it's like, these are the speakers. That's me because I'm lost. I'm filming my scenery to send a video to my friends to try and find me. That's what the video is for. All of my videos from the Nova are like, "I'm lost, where are you? Here's where I am," trying to find each other. And so eventually, you know, I'm looking through this crowd, and I still can't find her, and then the music stops, and no one knows why. And then the DJ, one of the producers, comes over the speaker and says, "Seva Adom, Seva Adom, red alert, red alert." And everybody's like, "What are you talking about? What red alert?" We don't, because we're in the middle of the desert. There's no sirens. There's no rockets. There's no azaka. Like, there's no outside anything to let us know there is danger. We have apps on our phones which ring out and give us this terrible sound, which lets us know when there's a rocket or an alarm. But it wasn't going off at that second. And then a few minutes passed, and then everybody's phones start exploding. And we all start to look to the sky, and we see black dots as they fill the sky, rockets being intercepted by the Iron Dome. And it's crazy because usually I'm in Tel Aviv when there's rockets, and rockets take a good minute or two to arrive, but here we're so close, we're seeing the rocket interceptions, and we're hearing them, and we're feeling the shockwave all simultaneously with nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. This next video I'm going to show you is taken right when the rockets began, just before the DJ stopped the music. In the very first frame, it's really fast. I wish I could pause it, but it's too fast for me. You can see me looking lost as heck with my phone in my hand, spinning around aimlessly, camera strapped around my chest, and then the person who's filming turns the camera around and you see the sky full of rockets. The attack began at 6:29, but there was rockets happening a few minutes before that. Just no one noticed right away. So after the rockets began, the music stops. The DJ and the security tell everyone, go back to your camp area, go back to your cars, party's over. And everybody was more upset at the fact the party was over than there was rockets. Because most of these people are Israeli. Rockets are part of life there. It's not anything special, especially if you live in the south. If you live in Sderot or Nativot or any of the kibbutz in the Otef, rockets are really not anything to scoff at. It's just another day in the life. And so most people weren't really taking it too seriously because no one expected anything else to come after rockets, because why would you? And so we head back to our camp, me and Ellie, and it's total chaos. You have both sides of the coin. You have people freaking out and losing their minds and panicking and going, and ducking for cover and laying on the ground and covering their heads and running to their cars and leaving their stuff. And then you had the other side. You had people still laughing and joking and smoking and playing music from their speakers, because their speaker still works and they still have music and they're going to dance. And those are Israelis. It's just how it is there. And so
Everything's fine. Real fine.
it's the party's over.
זהו, אני גם מעדיף להישאר קצת אחרי.
The party's over, even if we don't want it to be. Nothing's continuing. Are you saying stay because it's safer?
Everybody's gonna get out now.
You don't have a safer from here.
No, of course.
Wow, isn't
But,
anyway, so we are not in big danger.
But I'm just saying, there's no reason, because the festival's not continuing after this. So maybe we might as well just start packing up. Unfortunately.
No, I mean, there's no rush because let everybody.
Because everyone's rushing out.
Yeah. It's gonna be fucking jam.
I understand. You hear there's some close rockets and people scream, but for the most part, people are a bit nonchalant about the situation. And you can hear from my cousin, he's living in Israel, born in Sfat, served in the IDF, worked with Palestinians from Gaza, from the West Bank, knows a lot about the environment and where we were. So he was not as worried as some other people, but he's super Israeli. He's crazy Israeli. But, it was really hard to tell what was going on. Nobody really knew. And everybody was on their phones at the same time trying to see what's going on. And I'm trying to urge my friends, I want to go. I want to leave now. I know the party's over. There's no reason to stay. Yeah, there's traffic, but we're either going to wait for traffic to clear up, or we're going to go into traffic and wait to leave. We're waiting the same time. Let's go. And so we start talking. We're having this discussion for about 15 minutes. And then my cousin, he caves in. He gives in because I guess I'm too insistent. And he's like, okay, we'll leave. We'll pack up our stuff and we'll go. But he's like, we're going to take our time because I want to finish my beers. Verbatim. And so I tell him, okay, so I'm going to walk around. I still have film on my camera. I'm going to walk around, see if people need help packing up their stuff. And I'm going to take photos because it's still going to take us 45 minutes to pack up our stuff. It's not any more or less time with me involved. He says, take your time. We'll see you in a bit. And I start walking around doing the same as I was through the night, except now I'm mostly asking people if they need a hand, and also taking photos of what I'm seeing, not so much social interaction. This is my cousin on the right, and next to him is this guy who was in a hammock, you can see in the video, and he was incredibly calm the entire time, not freaking out, not stressed, not worrying, had a smile on his face the whole time, was eating with us, drinking with us, just, sharing about himself. He's from Kibbutz Be'eri. He lived in the south his whole life. He lives there with his ex-wife and his two daughters. And he came to the festival by himself instead of attending a Shabbat dinner that night with his family in Sderot or Nativot. And so I'm walking around, I meet Hodaya, she's part of the security detail, but she didn't have a gun. There was two forms of security. We had security with handguns and rifles, and then we had members of the security who were unarmed. Their only job is to make sure people behave themselves in the festival. Very common. She was helping Itai with this canopy they have. They were struggling, so I gave them a hand and told them the cost was a portrait, which they were happy to oblige. And then as I finished my film, I start heading back to my friends, and I hear off in the distance, really far away, not within the festival ground, but outside, really faint. I hear tak, 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 and then nothing. And then I walk a few meters, maybe 15, 20 meters, and then I hear it again. Tak, 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 tak. And I'm like, what does this sound? It sounds like a machine gun. This sounds like, somebody's shooting a machine gun really fast. And we're in Canada. We're all living in Canada. We don't have machine guns here. We don't have Kalashnikovs. We don't have Uzis. We don't have M16s. I'm sure if any of you have heard gunfire in your life, like myself, it's from Call of Duty or movies, or maybe you've gone to the gun range with a relative. But outside of that, here in Canada, you're only going to hear shotguns or hunting rifles, maybe a handgun if you go to a range, but only those guns. I've only ever heard machine guns in Call of Duty and movies. And the first thought I have in my head when I hear this sound is, that's a machine gun. That is a bad sound. It's a very chunky, visceral sound, like gritty. And I come back to my friends and I tell them what I heard, and nobody's in agreement. No one's arguing, and no one's saying, Shai, you're wrong, you're stupid, it's not a gun, it's this, or whatever. Because there's so much going on, no one knows what's happening. But one of my friends, he says to me, maybe it's one of the bases nearby, because we're in the south, there's lots of army nearby, maybe they're training, or they're conducting drills, or practicing, or something, and it's just like, I know I'm not in the IDF, I've never served, I've never fired an M16, but I know a lot of people who are, and a lot of people who have, and I'm a huge nerd about documentaries and war. And I know in the IDF, they're trained to fire their guns, they're trained to fire their M16s and their Tavors and their M4 rifles semi-automatic, which means one round at a time. And whenever they are in combat and they fire, it's typically in like a rhythmic pattern, so they know if it's a soldier firing or if it's a terrorist, because terrorists aren't trained, they just fire arbitrarily with no real intent other than to kill. And I tell my cousin that's, I hear machine gun fire. It doesn't sound like it's something far away. It sounds like it's pretty close. And no one knows what's going on. No one can agree. And thank God, because I really wanted to leave at that time and our stuff was packed up. We make our way to the parking lot where we meet Moti. And he came on this bus just back here with about 15 or 20 other people. And his bus was actually driven by a Palestinian from East Jerusalem. His name was Swahib. And so Moti came up to us and he's just checking on us and making sure we're all okay.
You can see my fucking hands. Shai, you're driving?
I'm absolutely okay to drive.
Good. You need water or something?
We have water. Thank you very much.
So maybe like 10 minutes after that, Hamas showed up. But from that first image I showed you of how everything's laid out, we were in the parking lot, which was on the side closest to Gaza. Hamas didn't know about the festival beforehand. Otherwise, we would have been the first people to get shot, because we were closest to Gaza. But they didn't know about us. We were just a fun bonus mission for them. Their focus was on the kibbutz and Sderot and Nativot and, the south. When they were coming along through the streets, going to each kibbutzim, either they saw people leaving the Nova, or when the paragliders entered Israel at 5:30 in the morning, maybe they saw the party or they heard it, because we're having a rave in the Negev, 3.5 kilometers from Gaza. Either you hear it or you see it, and we weren't even the only ones. There was another party happening at the same time, maybe a kilometer away, of 200 people. And then the day before, October 6th, the night of October 5th, there was another party happening in the exact same place as the Nova with even more people. It was like 8,000 people. So that's 4 nights in a row, rave in the desert, 3 kilometers from Gaza. There's no way on earth they didn't hear it or learn it was there after the fact or during, but they didn't know before. And so we're in the parking lot, we're loading up our car. Like I said, we came in 3 vehicles, but of all my friends, only 3 of us were sober enough to drive, one of which my friend Ellie over here, but she was too anxious and too scared to drive, so it was on me and my friend Dor. And Dor is driving himself, Barak and Almog, and I'm driving myself, my cousin Mordecai, Ellie, Yael, and my cousin's girlfriend. So we're 5 people in one car and 3 in another. And so we're loading up our stuff, and then the moment we're ready to get in their car, we're ready to leave, that's when Hamas shows up, around 7:45, 8 a.m., give or take. But we didn't see them because they came from over here. This is south towards Egypt, and this is north towards Tel Aviv. This is the main road, 232. So when Hamas arrived, they entered from this side. So we didn't see them, but we heard them. We heard all the gunfire. We heard all the screaming. We heard people screaming mechablim and pegua and all sorts of things. It's terrorist and terror attack in Hebrew. And so we all looked at each other scared, and they were like, we're losing our minds, like, what's going on? There's like machine guns, and they're on top of us. And we throw our stuff in the car, I climb in the driver's seat, and I make my way down. And if you've been to the Nova site, driving from Tel Aviv up this road, it's not the smoothest road. It's like a gravel path. And you can see from these cars, these are all cars that were either abandoned or people were murdered. There was maybe 5 times this many cars. If you've ever left a concert or a sporting event, it's the same thing, except now, if you wait too long, you're gonna die. And we're in a little toy car. We're in a Mitsubishi Lancer. It's not a Humvee, it's not a truck, it's not an SUV. It's not something that can go off-road. We're like in a Hot Wheels car. And I make my way from the parking lot towards the top of this hill, and I'm looking down at all this traffic as I'm like trying to assess the situation and where we're gonna go, how we're gonna get out. And I see all these cars, and I just think to myself, I'm not waiting for these people. I don't want to risk the sound of that gunfire getting on top of us. I'm just gonna go. And so I drove the car off the road, through the bushes, through the shrub, over the rocks, whatever, and I passed everybody, and I pushed my way just over here to this little patch of dirt. And then we made our way to the main road once the car in front of us had moved. Once we were able to leave, we had to choose a direction, and there was a few options. The way we came wasn't an option because police knew Hamas was already in Kibbutz Be'eri, in Kfar Aza, near Sad, in the kibbutzim along the road 232 to the north. So the police and the security set up just over here out of frame, and they blocked the road. And they told people, you can't go here because there's danger. They didn't let anyone. People went that way, but they were in jeeps and they drove around. Everyone else was told to drive the other way, to turn south, or to drive into this field directly adjacent to where the festival was. They gave people both directions, conflicting one another. People who took their first advice and drove south drove straight into Hamas terrorists, and many of them were murdered. That's why there was traffic that started to build up, which is what I saw. I didn't know what was happening. I just saw the result. I saw the cars backed up and stopping, and people getting out and looking confused and not sure what's going on. And I thought, I don't want to deal with that. I didn't know the result was because of Hamas terrorists killing people down the road. So the other option was for us to drive into this field. And I thought, coming from Canada, it's not a terrible idea because we'll find a house, or we'll find a shed or a barn or a road, or it's a service road or something, some way out. We make it into this field maybe 20, 30 meters before we're shot at. Arbitrarily, everybody in this field. They're shooting at everybody with a pulse in a car, on foot. We all flee the car. My cousin's girlfriend screams bloody murder. We're being shot at. We run into this field, and my friend Ellie and I were ducking down and holding onto each other, and Tamara and Yael doing the same, holding onto each other within arm's reach. And then the four of us look back at my cousin Mordecai as he runs back to the car, gets in the driver's seat, comes back to us, and now he's driving, and I'm in the passenger seat, and there's nothing else left for me to do except film and take photos and help navigate and just cross my fingers and hope he's a good enough driver. This is a photo of our car, of us at a checkpoint, and this is the exact path we took to escape. This is the way there, through Mefalsim, Kfar Aza, Be'eri, to Nova, 5 kilometers from the border here. And we left from here in the Nova site to Netivot. This drive here took us 45 minutes. If you're driving along roads, it takes you like 15, but it took us almost an hour to make it from the Nova site towards Netivot. And only once we got to Netivot did we start seeing the result of Hamas's actions. Only once we got to the city and onto the main roads did we start seeing bodies all over the place, cars like this police car, riddled with bullets, bodies in them, bodies around them. And the whole time we're driving, I'm telling my friends and the girls in the back to keep their heads under the window line, so if there's terrorists and they see us, they don't shoot us, making it harder to hit us, harder to recognize who's in the car. This is passing the city of Netivot.
Very good.
Those are our rockets, IDF. You see it turns in the air to intercept.
Over the median. Yeah, no.
We had stopped at the intersection thinking it was a checkpoint, but we waited there for 10 minutes and no one talked to us. And I told my cousin, I don't think it's a checkpoint. Drive over the median and past them. That's what we did. We come to this scene over here. There's a bunch of officers. They're not IDF, they're police officers. 3 vehicles, 1, 2, and then this guy here. This is his car. He pulled up next to us, 8:40 in the morning. My cousin talks to him. He's shouting at him through the window because he's next to us. He's asking him, what's going on? Can we leave? Can we go past you? We were at this party. There was a massacre. We need to go to Tel Aviv. That's where we're from. We don't want to go anywhere else. And then as he's talking, I notice in the middle of the road, in front of this car, there's 3 cars. In the middle of all 3 cars, there's 2 officers face down, dead in the middle of the road. And this guy tells us that it's dangerous. Somewhere in these shrubs, just by these purple bushes, somewhere in this ditch, in these huge overgrown bushes, there's 3 terrorists hiding, and they don't know where they are, and they're finding them. They just killed 2 of their guys, and it's not safe for us. We have to leave. And my cousin gets so irritated because we want to go home and we're freaking out. He starts cursing him out in whatever languages he knows and yelling at him until the soldier tells us, okay, you can go through, but please go fast because it's dangerous. You might get shot. There's terrorists. So my cousin floors it all the way through. We keep driving along this main road, and we're seeing these huge black pillars of smoke all around us, here to the right, to the left, in front of us, behind us. And the reality is not something I would have ever imagined. I'm imagining, okay, a rocket hit a gas station, or maybe some shrubs are on fire, some flammable plants, or garbage, or a car, or something. I didn't know each of these huge pillars of smoke was because people are being burnt alive in their homes. I couldn't even imagine the reality of what it was. And we're driving down this road, and it's Route 34 in between Netivot and Sderot. This stretch of highway is where we saw the worst of it. And we're seeing dozens and dozens of cars, left, right, 3 here, 2 here, open, looted, belongings all over the ground, people who are dead still in the car, people who are dead all along the road, around the car. And the whole time we're freaking out more and more. Every body we pass, we freak out more and more. And I'm telling my friends to keep their heads low under the car, and my cousin to keep his eyes just over the steering wheel so he can drive, but drive safely. And then we come across these two guys who are standing next to a silver car. All the doors are open, belongings on the ground, and these guys, they're wearing jeans like myself, black cargo pants, black t-shirts, one with a tactical vest, the other without. Both of them wearing black balaclava masks over their heads, holding machine guns. And then the car beside them, we see very clearly inside the car, because all the doors are open, a man and a young woman in the front seat who had been murdered, blood on the ground, broken glass, bloody bag on the ground. One of the men, his back is to us, and we can see his arms are covered in blood. And the other guy is facing us, and he does this with his gun. He draws his gun and points it at us and just stands there. And we drive by, and my cousin slows down very much. And we look at them, and they look at us, and we can see the whites of their eyes through their masks. That's how close we are. And nothing happens. We drive. They look at us, we look at them, and we go. And that's it. And then we get home to Tel Aviv, and we're all losing our minds, and we're not sure where our friends are. We're trying to figure out the whole evening what's going on with our friends. And I just want to tell you all of that to preface that this is a video of exactly what I just described. So if that's not something you'd like to see, maybe look away or similar.
Don't stop, don't stop. Don't stop, don't stop. Brody, don't stop. Down. Everybody down. Yeah, Ellie. Down. Head between your legs. Fast, 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 fast. Foot, don't stop. Foot, stop. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Sorry. Go! Watch the, around.
That was filmed at 8:47 in the morning, and we arrived to my cousin's apartment in South Tel Aviv, all 5 of us in the car, at 9:47 in the morning, 1 hour later, while still for the next 10 hours, people throughout the south of Israel were brutally attacked and kidnapped and massacred by Hamas terrorists while the army did nothing. And me and my friends were calling our other 3 friends, Barak, Almog, and Doraz, incessantly from 10 at night on October 7th until who knows when. We found out later that night that they survived. They were rescued by the IDF, by the Golani Brigade, fighters in the IDF who are not even supposed to exist in the south of Israel. They're the Golani, that's where they're supposed to be. But they survived. My friends hid in a bush, this exact bush, this is it, it's hardly a bush, for 7.5 hours, while Hamas terrorists within 10 meters brutally massacred people around them in this field. Laying so still for so long that my friend Dor passed out from exhaustion, and Almog got nerve damage in her leg. She's okay now, but she was unable to properly walk for about a year. And then after the fact, after we learned all 8 of us had survived, thank God, we're all home, we're all okay, my concern shifted to, okay, I have to find out whether all these people I just spent, all night with, talking with and hanging out with and making friends with are okay. So anybody whose phone number I had, I sent them a text. Anybody whose Instagram I had, I sent them a message. And I did this every day until I heard back. Anybody who I could contact, I did. Then I posted on Facebook all the photos I had and said, if you recognize any of these people, please tell me if they're okay, tell me if they're dead, tell them I'm okay, vice versa. And it took me from October 7, 2023 until December 31st that year to find out what happened to everybody I met in the Nova. And of the 54 people I made friends with and met and photographed, 52 survived. So everybody you see here, this is everybody who survived. They're all still in Israel, or they're traveling, or they're doing the same thing as me, but in somewhere else. And the 2 individuals who did not survive were Dor Avitan and his friend Dor Malka, who were working in that booth in the market, and Ran Schaefer, who is 48 from Kibbutz Be'eri, who was next to our camp. And actually about Ran, because he decided to come to the Nova by himself last minute, instead of joining his family for Shabbat dinner, his ex-wife and his 2 daughters did not stay home in their place in Be'eri. And because he didn't go with them to Shabbat dinner, they stayed the night at their relatives instead of going home. And they survived. Their home was totally destroyed. So because he went to the Nova and unfortunately died, they survived, which is really a terrible coincidence. One of the last things I want to share with you is that in May 2024, there was a news article published by N12, an outlet in Israel, about a Shin Bet officer, Yossi Tahar, this guy on the very far left from that video of mine, saying that he and his partner, I believe both of them, were killed on October 7th defending Kibbutz Mefelsim. Actually just Yossi, because his partner is still unidentified, so he's still alive. But they're wearing masks because the Shin Bet are sort of undercover police in Israel. They have to keep their identities secret. They're not supposed to identify themselves. That's why they were dressed how they were dressed and why they were where they were, why they looked so terrifyingly similar to Hamas, because they were trying to save lives. You know, his arms were covered in blood because he was checking the people in the car next to him if they were still alive. But we didn't know that at the time. We thought they were terrorists for over a year and a half. And so now I want to make sure that you don't send you guys home thinking that they were murderers and terrorists, because it's actually the opposite. These two men were heroes, and one of them died defending the country. And ever since then, since October 8th, 2023, because I speak English fluently, and there's not too many people who are in the Nova who do, I knew the importance of firsthand testimonies and hearing lived experience. And so I have been visiting different communities across the US and Canada, mostly schools predominantly, sharing about my own experience and what is going on in Israel, especially in regard to people who survived the Nova, talking about resources that people can support or share, help platform, ways people can, spread what happened to us and act in a way that is positive to the community. Because after October 7th, most of the media prefers to talk about the war and not how people who survived this event that kicked it all off are doing. We still have soldiers who take their lives every month. We have Nova survivors who have no jobs or have no homes, or people from the kibbutz in the same situation, people from Sderot and Netivot in the same situation. But there's not too much talking about it outside of Israel, unfortunately. So I'm making sure to have that conversation everywhere I go. And seeing you all here, giving me your attention and your time, listening to me speak, even if it is long-winded, about this horrible event that I experienced and that we all have to deal with the aftermath from, very much means the absolute world to myself and everybody else who survived October 7th, that you're willing to bear witness to what we experienced and give us your support and your ear. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Just on the screen is just a link. It's just to the rest of my photos from the Nova on my website if you'd like to see them. Do you want to use this?
No, because I want to. Are you okay to take some questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
So Shai, first of all, thank you. Hmm?
Do you want to use this?
Yeah.
I can shout. I don't mind.
Well, I think I can probably turn this now if it's not. How's that? Yeah? Okay, so first of all, Shai, thank you so much. Do you want to keep that on? Guess we're going to ask.
I think I can shout.
Well, the people online can't hear. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot
It's
about the
okay.
screen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So thank you for sharing with us, and for your courage in speaking about this and making sure that the stories of survival and also those who didn't survive are told. Shai's open to taking questions if anyone has.
Nothing you guys ask me will upset me or send me into some sort of spiral. Whatever, leave me alone.
There you go. Yeah, so Shai was just saying you're welcome to ask anything. He's comfortable to answer questions.
And also one-on-one after the fact. Yes?
How do you feel about the Canadian response to Israel in this situation?
In what context? About what specifically? Because I have a lot of opinions about a lot of different things of Canada.
Army and his support and his recognition of the Palestinian state. What is your perspective?
Honestly, I'd have less issue with it if he followed suit with Belgium. Belgium said they would offer recognition to a state on the condition Hamas disarms themselves, stops governing Gaza, and releases the hostages, which I feel is a very fair middle ground to both those things. But he didn't. And then he did that also maybe 1 month after visiting the Nova exhibition in Toronto as well, which I think makes it even more offensive. You know, it's very frustrating. But also, I don't even know if I should say this. I attended a rally in Toronto, which was proposed to me as a hostage rally. And I was the only speaker who spoke about the hostages. And when I was there, you know, it felt like I was at a Trump rally. Nobody was talking about the hostages. Nobody was talking about how to, you know, end this in a way that everybody can keep their peace. It was all about how bad it is here in Canada, and it felt a little selfish. You know, it felt misplaced, the anger. A lot of people said the Canadian government weren't doing enough to bring back the hostages, but what is the Canadian government supposed to do? What can they do? Canada doesn't have any sort of impact in that context at all. It's a little frustrating to hear this anger directed at people who can't really do anything about it outside of speak, you know? And it was a little upsetting to see because the flip side you have in Israel, almost 1 million people protesting every weekend for the last 5 weeks, setting fire in front of the Prime Minister's house, trying to get them to do their best to bring the hostages home. And instead they risk their lives by failing to kill the Hamas leaders in Qatar, which we know will lead to the direct torture and possible execution of our hostages. But instead of condemnation, I saw mostly support, which really was upsetting, because these are people who are friends of friends who I have a connection to, and to see people sort of not care was very hard to be around. And unfortunately, I think that's something that is very present, not just in Canada, but in the US as well, in Jewry here. It's sort of lost the plot, lost the objective of all this anger we have and where to direct it, if that makes sense. Yes? No. The target was the major cities, the kibbutzniks who live in the Otef. You know, they wanted to cause terror and mass damage and mass casualties. You know, they wanted to go to all the kibbutzim and Sderot and Netivot and Ashdod and Ashkelon and Tel Aviv. But because there was 4,000 people under influence 3 miles from Gaza, it was just too good of an opportunity for them to pass up. And so for 7 hours, instead of brutalizing the rest of the country, they were sort of hung up on us. You know, of the 1,500 murdered on October 7th, 411 were just from the party alone, just from the Nova. 55 were kidnapped. So of the 255 kidnapped, 55 from the Nova, 1,500 killed. It's 1,100 from the kibbutz, Sderot and Netivot, and then 411 from the Nova. But no, we were not their initial target. Anyone else? Yes?
Really isn't for you, but I find it horribly distressing that there's so few people here, and there are not many people who, I mean, maybe some of the people here certainly welcome them, who are not of Jewish faith. And it really distresses me, like,
Well, it's Canadian media because, Canadian media reports on mostly North American and Canadian issues. It's hard for Canadians to care about every massacre, what's happening in Nepal, what's happening in Myanmar, what's happening in Congo, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Somalia, what's happening in Afghanistan, what's happening in Iraq. It's very exhausting for Westerners who don't live in these places, who maybe have family in some of these places, to care about everything that happens. And especially because this is in a synagogue, it's not assumed by everybody that it might be open. So a lot of what I do is I speak at various communities like this synagogue, or more public events like with the Israel Policy Forum or U of T or TMU or York, which are more accessible and open to the public, or like when I spoke at the Prosserman JCC, they did a very good job of advertising it to non-Jews and outside the Jewish sphere. But
I'm just saying that
but it's,
something that we need to do in this community.
but would you go to an event that's held in a church? Would you assume that you're welcome?
Yes. And I would go, and I have gone.
Not everybody is like that. And a lot of people don't feel welcome in some places because of not too much understanding of Jews and Judaism. Some people might feel that we wouldn't welcome them because they don't know much about the Jewish community.
All I'm saying is that we need to, in my opinion, we need to reach out to the rest of our community and say this is something important, and it affects not only us as Jewish people, it affects us as human beings. And so when you talk about the suffering in Nepal or Darfur or many of the other places that you mentioned, I care about that. Okay? I think it's important that we Jewish people tell our neighbors and our friends that this is something important. Pay attention.
Thanks, Michael. So I want to make sure others have a chance to ask questions.
Yes, in the back.
For Shai, yeah.
Good evening. You've got courage, strength, and the will to let everybody know, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Both my husband and I. Both my husband and I have immediate family living in Israel. My husband's cousin has 4 girls, 3 of them just going into teenagehood. She's over-educating them to keep one of them or 2 of them out of the army for a couple of years. She doesn't know she's going to get away with it, but she's trying.
Lots of boring jobs in the army.
She's in her final bit of university computer sciences. My cousin is the same age as me. I'm 3 weeks older than him, and it's a standing laugh in our family because he's the generation above me, but I'm 3 weeks older than him, which is kind of dumb. However, he's been in Israel since just after the 6-Day War. His family, my uncle, was a scrap metal merchant in the UK, and they went to Israel, and he was given the magnificent job of clearing Haifa Harbor of all the metal that they didn't want to stay in there.
Right.
My aunt worked at the university, but they had 5 boys and a girl.
So we're just short on time. So
Yeah,
if there's a question, is there a question for Shai?
There is.
Yeah, okay.
Very quickly.
Okay.
I'll break it down.
Thank you.
What I believe, and I'm not sure if I should, what possibly would have happened if Israel said we don't give a bleep for the Palestinians and blow them out of the water on day 2? What do you think the world would have said?
I think we'd be in the same situation we're in now, except they'd be validated. They say we're doing what many Israelis wish we did, But instead, we've destroyed 90% of Gaza, but there's still 2 million Palestinians alive. Very hard to do if you're doing a genocide, which you're accused of, You would have killed the 94% along with destroying the 94%. No, genocide requires intent. If that was the case, just people dying, then the Allies would have committed genocide when 700,000 French civilians were bombed in the Allied bombing of Versailles. But that wasn't the case. There's a math they do in war. If the objective, achieving it, outweighs the cost of civilian life, There is a threshold which they are allowed to be within. 10 dead, 15 dead, it depends on what is happening at the time. And unfortunately, many people in the diaspora who are not Jewish, who say there's genocide, have never been out of their state or their city, or living in a country where there's war, or been in a conflict zone, or have family who've served, and they don't know what it comes with and what it entails. And they just say what their friends say, and it causes problems for us. But, it doesn't end with the Jews. It just starts. Any other questions? Yes.
What do you think now about living in Israel after being
I still live in Israel. I arrived here in North America in July, immediately after Iran began their new attack. I had broken my femur in May. My cousin fell on me. And so I can handle a broken femur, and I can handle being bombed, but I can't handle being bombed and not being able to run from the bombs. So that was very hard for me to handle, being in a wheelchair when there's ballistic missiles falling a block away from where I'm staying, which is what happened. And so after the second impact, which was 500 meters from where I was staying, and I saw it out my window, I reached out to an organization in the US, and I told them, I'll come and I'll speak to your students at whatever event you want for free if you just get me a flight out of Israel for a little while. And so they said, okay. So I figured I'll take a little break from being bombed, and I'll make a positive impact, and I'll visit schools and communities, and I'll talk about my experience, and also use the opportunity to decompress, and then go back when there's no more missiles in the sky. So I plan on going back in November. Yes?
We see a lot of people from here making Aliyah, continue to make Aliyah. You just talked about your example where you've come here with grace, temporary period. I know a lot of people with young kids who have moved from Israel to here because of what you said, didn't live here. Has that one in Israel was very rude, like a young child who's just come and said, the country is broken, we know that, and the people are broken. And some need to leave, and others are going because it's not fair. Do you have many friends that
Left?
have done similar to what you've done, or are saying we've got to look at different opportunities? Like in your circle.
None of my friends have left. They all travel. Most Nova survivor. I have the belief that if you live in Israel and you want to recover from whatever trauma you suffer while living in Israel, it's not going to happen in Israel. I don't think it's possible to heal from any of this in Israel. I think you can only do it outside of Israel, because even if you're doing something that feels amazing and you think is really helping you, you're in Israel and you have that subconscious thought of what if, where's the bunker, when's the next siren, it's in your body, that burden is on your mind, whether it's conscious or not. And only when you leave the country do you have a chance to relax your shoulders and let out that breath, because you know that you're not going to be targeted by the Houthis on Shabbat. You know what I mean? And I think the statistic now is, since 2023, October 7th, there's been 87,000 new Aliyah into Israel. And I think the people that have left has been around 40,000, or almost equal to, but it's pretty balanced. But most of my friends are still in Israel and still working, and in the army and fighting in Gaza and in the north and on the border, and doing their part. Some of them because they want to, others because they don't have a choice. Many people can't leave, even if they wanted to. And it's very complicated. But thank you for the question. Any more? Yes, in the pink shirt. No, I'm too old. I'm 28, and I moved to Israel when I was 26. So I'm not as useful to them as they'd like, which is good, because I wouldn't serve in the military. I feel like there's way better ways to contribute than picking up a gun and fighting for a government who values dead terrorists more than living soldiers or hostages. I feel like I can help out a lot better. Is that
I think there was a question
Oh.
in the back.
yes?
I just wanted to say one thing. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Talk a little bit with the lady in the front was saying where we have to talk more about what's going on in Israel and what's happening with our hostages. Have you found one of these speaking engagements where it wasn't going to happen, where people are like, no, we're not interested in listening or hearing what you have to say? Because I'll give you an example. I speak a lot about Israel. I grew up in Israel. My family lives there. And I work in a very large hospital. And I find that the anti-Semitism, I think, was always there. But after October 7th, people feel free to talk about it like it's okay. And I'm often like with people at them. And I think a speaking engagement and maybe a big union.
Oh, I'd love to. I spoke to 1,000 Amazon workers in Seattle. That was amazing. Non-Jews, organized by like 2 Jewish employees.
And find maybe that's also a route to go.
I find most of the time when I speak, it's mixed audiences. Like 99% of the time, it's mixed audiences because I'm mostly speaking in universities. You know, Boston University, I had about 90 people show up, almost entirely non-Jews, even though it was organized by the Hillel the organization, which was really funny. But I haven't had too many people sort of say, oh, we don't want to hear you speak because you're talking about X, X, or X. Me and other Nova survivors have faced a lot of, oh, we don't want to hear you speak because you weren't a hostage, or your experience isn't traumatic enough, we don't want to hear it, or we already heard a story from the Nova, so we don't need to hear another one. A lot of that. A lot of people who sort of treat it as like, not as a privilege, but as something that's owed, you know? Being able to hear these testimonies is a privilege, because it's not owed. Any Nova survivor or survivor of war or terror anywhere, not even Jewish, is doing a community service by speaking about it. And they know the positive impact it has outside of that community and the people it affects, and you know how far those stories go. But there's quite a few people who sort of trivialize or downplay it. You know, I can show you my whole inbox of people asking if I do Nova tours in Israel, as if I'm like a tour guide. And I'm happy to go with groups to the south and accompany them and talk about it. But I'm not a tour guide, you know. I don't lead terror tours. It's not like it's some fairy tale that makes people feel good about themselves. That's not the case. You know, it's so people understand that what we went through is something that should be spoken about for generations in order to educate non-Jews and Jews about the reality of what happens in the Middle East. You know, too many people apply their Western lens to it, their understanding of war fought between 2 nations, or World War II, or Canada, or the US, or genocide of the Native Americans, or Western problems and Western solutions and Western education to Israel. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't apply. It's not a Latin language. It's not a Latin country. It's the Middle East. It's a totally different set of rules. And so I hope to help more people understand that. I think that's it.
Yeah, we'll take one last question.
I think in the back right. Mostly. I attended them. I hung out at Columbia and NYU and Queens and McMaster and Concordia, and I had people wearing keffiyehs high-fiving me because I was taking photos. I was posing for my camera. The only people I'm able to have reasonable conversations about this with, and in these campuses and in these places, are international students who come from the Middle East, because they understand. You know, talking to a student from Syria, he knows what it's like. Talking to a student from Afghanistan, he knows what it's like. They know Islam, and they know jihad, and they know terror groups, and they know war. And then, talking to these Canadian or Western students who maybe don't have passports, or maybe they're expired, or they've never left their city or state, never faced anti-Semitism if they're Jewish and pro-Palestine, which I find is mostly the case. It's hard to give them that understanding because many of them just don't want to hear it. They've made up their mind. The information they read is the right information, and whatever I tell them, because I'm Jewish and in Israel and I have an Israeli passport, it must be brainwashing propaganda, and it's not worth hearing. Even if I show them photos and the videos on my phone and they're like, it's propaganda, it's not real. It's challenging. Realistically or ideally? There's two different answers for that. Ideally, this ends, Hamas just surrenders and stops governing Gaza and releases the hostages, and terror attacks stop, and Bibi does what Trudeau does and steps down, and the rest of the Arab world stops bombing Israel, and some sort of intermediary body of foreign nations as a coalition to lead Gaza is formed with no Israel involved. I think that's like the best possible outcome. I think Israel should just be far away from Gaza in regards to any sort of talking relationship, just have nothing to do with it. I definitely don't think we should be back living there. We already have soldiers taking their lives who are overworked. 13% of the country doesn't serve. We don't need to overwork our friends and family more for something that's not necessary. It's a hard situation, and I hope it ends in a way where everybody's equally unhappy. I feel like that's a good compromise.
Thank you, Shai. Thank you, everybody, for your questions.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you. Microphone. So thank you again, Shai.
I'm mostly here when I'm not visiting different schools and communities. I have a IPF event in Toronto on the 25th, and I'm attending the rally. If you guys have time tomorrow, there's at noon in the city of Toronto by the CN Tower a demonstration for the hostages, and one of the speakers is Yair Golan. And Yair Golan is opposition to Bibi. And on October 7th, while Bibi got a haircut ready for his press conference, Yair Golan, as a civilian, out of uniform, risked his life, went in his little tiny shitbox car like we have in Israel, and drove down south towards Hamas terrorists and saved lives of people from the Nova. And so I think he's somebody very much worth hearing what he has to say. He's a very important voice if you care about what's happening in Israel. So if you have the opportunity, I suggest you see him speak. And I'll be there.
Yeah. Thank you again, everyone. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. It's incredible to have Shai here. The reason we're doing it tonight is that it's also Slichot, which are the prayers that we say a week ahead of Rosh Hashanah. So we're going to, those who would like to stay for the prayers, we're going to have Havdalah and Slichot service. So we're just going to take 5 minutes. If you're not staying, I will ask you to quietly make your way out. Everybody's welcome to stay. We hope you'll stay. So in 5 minutes, we'll begin Slichot. Thanks again, Shai.